And welcome back to episode 6 of the Standard, a fantasy football podcast. If you're tuning in, like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification button to see when all these episodes drop. Just so you all know, every day in the morning and afternoon, we post shorts as well. We talk about players we like, players we don't like. We talk about top 10, top 5. To include, if you watched on Monday, we're talking about today on this episode, offenses we want to target in the draft and offenses we want to avoid. So let's get into it. So you and I were talking about this offline a little bit earlier. One team we really want a piece of, any piece of, and I'm lucky I have stock in it, is the Miami Dolphins. So let me hear your thoughts, and obviously since I have a little bit of stake in the game, I will let you know what I think.
Yeah, this is an offense that we both agree is going to be explosive. There's speed all across this offense that we really like. And we saw last year what they were able to do, even with Tua missing 7 games last year, the amount of numbers that they were able to put up with between Tyreek and Waddle. But I think on the running backs too, we've kind of done a deeper dive into the running backs on one of our shorts where, you look at Jeff Wilson Jr. and you look at Raheem Mostert, and they both put up over 1,000 all-purpose yards each. And you add Devin A-Chain to the mix. There's speed all across this offense. And we know Mike McDaniels and the kind of the offense he likes to run with the spread run offense and play action off of that. They hit deep balls fairly well with accuracy. So with Tua coming back, and hopefully this all revolves around Tua being healthy. And you can make
Correct.
This argument across the board for any of the teams that we like. If Tua is healthy, the numbers that they can put up, and we kind of talked offline about this as well, is that, you can even make the argument Tyreek in years past was a late first round, early second round. But, if Tua was healthy last year, he could have been wide receiver 1 overall over Jefferson. And that's the kind of numbers that he was putting up. And, you look at before Tua's injury, the kind of offense that this was, and they were throwing up, the second game against Baltimore where they throw up 50 points. Tua had 6 touchdowns in that game. And it was just explosive play after explosive play. And I think that's what the appealing things about this offense is that any one of these guys can hit a hole, take a 5-yard pass, and take it deep, 80 yards. And that goes for the running backs too. They all have track speed. And so it's very appealing to have a piece of this. And whether it's getting Waddle and Tyreek early or being able to snag a guy like Tua in the, post 8th round, or get a guy like Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, or Devin A-Chain, and any one of those guys you can get 10th round or later. But those are the guys like who else would you rather get, like a backup running back on another team, or one of these guys that's going to have an impact? So I know you have a little stake in the game with Waddle, but I love this offense.
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head with my thoughts. I mean, anybody on this team can take a small reception from Tua or a run around the outside and just beeline to the end zone. And that home run ability is what you want, especially in fantasy football, because, standard league here that we talk about, touchdowns matter. And one of the big things too is you may think of yourself, well, there's 3 running backs. Who's going to be the starter? Well, we don't know yet, but that doesn't matter. Both running backs between Mostert and Wilson were viable last year. And even if you don't get one of those guys, you can take a late flyer on A-Chain who they're going to try and get him the ball with that speed that he has. I mean, when they drafted him, McDaniel, first thing he said when he picked up the phone was, "Are you still fast?" So he's going to find a way to get him the ball. And here's the one thing that I'm thinking, this is just me, in my personal opinion, that I could see possibly happening in Miami, is with the injuries that happened to Tua last year. In order for him to take maybe some less hits early on, maybe we may see this. I don't know if this would be season long, but you may see a lot smaller, quick, shorter, sharper passes, some quick dump offs to the running backs, him getting the ball out of his hands quick and letting these guys just do the work. And look at Jalen Waddle last year, over 18 yards per catch. Insane numbers. I mean, Tyreek can do the same thing. And these running backs get the ball in their hand and they just go straight. You fall forward for 5 yards. So I love this offense. I love the capability of them and the speed. I have a piece in it in our draft, but if I'm you guys out there listening, look for an opportunity and don't be afraid, if you really want to take Tyreek Hill one spot after Justin Jefferson, because he's worthy of that pick. I can make the argument that he's better than any other of the receivers to draft there and running backs.
I could make that same argument where I would probably, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, put them in any order, and I'm happy with any one of them.
Correct.
And so you can make an argument for each one of them to have volume there. The thing with Tyreek Hill is that he is explosive. I mean, he has track speed and can take the ball. And, you know, especially with standard, the big playability is so important because you're breaking off not only chunk yardage, but have the ability to break off the chunk yardage and the touchdown.
Yep.
And that matters in fantasy. And we saw that a lot out of Tyreek. We saw that a lot out of Waddle. You know, we didn't see that too much out of the running backs there, but, you know, that doesn't matter because, again, each one of them is going to have a role to play. And even with Mozart and Wilson, a lot of people are off of them. But Devin Achane right now, and a lot of the ADPs that we're seeing, he's going up the board and he's being drafted 10 spots higher than Raheem Mozart is. And that's crazy to me. But I mean, that's my personal opinion. But that's a value if you're able to get someone else to goes and gets Devin Achane in the 10th round. Well, that means Raheem Mostert's sitting there for you in the 12th. And that's perfect. You know,
exactly.
That's a perfect value for you because he's going to get the opportunities. He knows his offense.
Yeah, and again, the caveat to this offense is if we don't have Tua at the helm, you can't rely on anything. What we saw was Tyreek getting fed when Tua was out, and Waddle got his, but he had a lot less targets on average when Tua was out. So that's something to keep an eye on, and you are putting your faith in Tua. But, hey, it's worth doing it because these guys will win you seasons.
Yeah, and I'll say this is to kind of close out the Dolphins is that even if Tua gets hurt, they got Mike White. And I'm a Jet fan, so obviously take this with some bias. But Mike White is a better option than Teddy Bridgewater from a fantasy perspective. He can handle sustaining wide receivers in the big play. He's going to dump off the ball. It's perfect for the kind of offense that they run, which is get the ball out of the quarterback's hands and into your playmaker's hands. So it's a better secondary option, even if Tua goes down.
You know, it's a great point because Mike White pushed the ball down the field really well when he played for the Jets, and that's something Teddy couldn't do with his two gloves when he was with the Dolphins. He struggled with it, held on the ball a little bit too long. Mike White did make good plays when he was in there for the Jets. He's green, or behind the ears, but he can get the job done.
He was green. No, he's
green. Well, speaking of green and speaking of Mike White and the Jets are another offense that the two of us both want to try and target and get somebody from their team on our fantasy teams. And I'll start off saying is like Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback I'm targeting in drafts because he is falling down lower and lower in ADP than he should be just based off of how he did last year. And we all know how he did last year. He did last year decent across the board, better than most, but he was also dealing with a smorgasbord of rookie wide receivers and injuries across his entire team and an offensive line that was a little bit more depleted. You now put yourself in a situation where you've got a solid wide receiver one. You have solid veteran wide receivers around him with Lazard and Corey Davis. And then you give yourself solid running game. We know Michael Carter can handle the load at times, and you've got a new speedy rookie coming in. And so I think when you get Breece Hall back, this offense is running on all cylinders, and that's what they were missing last year was just somebody at the helm to push them over the hill. They were great first half of the season, right? And then all of a sudden just fell off the shelf because quarterback play was just abysmal. And now you get yourself a guy who has a Hall of Fame track record. I love it. Garrett Wilson excites me. I think he's going to go lower in your drafts than he should be. This guy is going to put up numbers that Devontae Adams did for the Green Bay Packers. Like, that's how good I feel about it. And Lazard, to me, is another sleeper. This guy is going to be the wide receiver, too, there. And I like Corey Davis. I think he's a great receiver, but the rapport with Lazard is there already. He's going to be the outlet, the go-to guy if he gets himself on the field more than the other receivers.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of my rankings of their wide receivers is a little bit different. Like Garrett Wilson, obviously number one there, Lazard number two there, and then for number three actually is Mecole Hardman over Corey Davis. I think what they can do with Mecole Hardman, you saw what they did in Kansas City with him. Sure. He used a lot of those trickery plays, especially down the goal line. He can do a lot with the ball in his hands after a catch or after a jet sweep. He's a guy that really intrigues me there. I think this offensive line is a heck of a lot better than last year.
If it can stay healthy.
that if they, I mean, listen, you can make that argument again for anyone.
Well, we just know the Jets.
Has injury.
Yeah, I was just saying, they haven't been able to stay healthy the past couple seasons.
Yeah, they get Joe Tippmann, a huge monster of a center. I think they have a really competitive offensive line. What I think is really interesting, and this just came out today with Aaron Rodgers talking about Garrett Wilson's IQ, and he compared him to Devontae Adams, to Jordy Nelson, to James Jones, to Greg Jennings. And that's a heck of a praise coming from a guy like Aaron Rodgers.
Absolutely.
And I think you look at Garrett Wilson's year last year, and he put up 1,100 yards. These touchdowns were low, which dropped him in the standard rankings. But you could imagine if he was doing 1,100 yards last year with Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, and Mike White throwing him the football.
I know.
You add Aaron Rodgers in there, and you can just see the numbers go up exponentially. I don't care if there's more competition around him. I think this offense is going to be a lot better as a whole. And when Breece Hall comes back, I'm targeting Jets all across my draft. So I have my top tier guys that I want in the first couple of rounds. I have my mid tier guys that I'm targeting there, but I want a piece of this offense, and I don't care where it is. Like if I have to get Mecole Hardman in the 12th round, I'll get Mecole Hardman in the 12th round. And because if anything happened to Lazard, Corey Davis comes in, Mecole's still going to be used as a kind of a utility guy. I had him last year and picked him up off waivers, and he was scoring every week, and he had Mahomes throwing the ball and the gadgetry that they had there. Breece Hall's a guy I absolutely love. I don't care that he comes off an injury. Like he's going to come back healthy. He's going to be ready for the season. And when he is, again, this offensive line is a heck of a lot better than it was last year. He's explosive. Michael Carter is a guy that I like early in the season, and then Izzy is another guy, Ibanaconda, that I absolutely love, and I think is a deep sleeper. Early in the season, maybe not long in this later in the season, but early in the season. But even guys like CJ Uzama and Tyler Conklin, I really like at a tight end position, especially if you're going to go and get a lower end tight end, having them as a second. Aaron Rodgers loves a big tight end, and you have two great pass catching tight ends that they have there. So I want a piece of this offense. It's just a matter of where I'm going to get them.
Yeah, and I love Garrett Wilson. I wasn't a believer until you really watch his game film and you watch how he played last year, and he was constantly open. There's a reason why Elijah Moore fizzled out after a rookie showing that was okay, but you expected him to be the number one guy going into the season, and Garrett Wilson himself just took control, took the reins, and I mean he was Ohio State, right? Garrett Wilson.
Ohio State.
Yeah, you can trust Ohio State receiver any day. Those guys run routes like machines. I mean, that's why Michael Thomas was led the league in receiving, Ohio State guy. Like you just look at the Ohio State receivers over the past 6-7 years, and they've been solid guys.
Yeah, you had Olave and Garrett Wilson as the top two Rookie of the Year candidates.
Was Terry McLaurin Ohio State too? I think.
I believe he was.
Right, I think he was too. So I don't quote me on that. I think he is, but you just look at these guys from Ohio State, and they breed good wide receivers there, and so does Alabama. I mean, you can't go wrong with these guys. So, I mean, my opinion, I like Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall. This is if he didn't get hurt, would be a running back one position. I think he'd be drafted at the tail end of the first round, early second round. You're going to see him be a running back two option because you just don't know how they're going to bring him back and how they're going to manage him. So that could be a steal in your draft, taking the chance on him as your running back two, and then taking one of those other guys later as insurance, because nobody's going to jump up to get Michael Carter. Nobody's going to jump up to get Abanikana, because nobody's going to want to waste early pick on that. So you can drag that out, and you're the one who's got Breece Hall. Your option could be there. And sure enough, who knows? When Breece Hall's healthy, that guy's a monster. He's a machine. He's exactly what the Jets wanted to get out of him, and he proved it last year. So
I think this goes for, without saying, for all these teams that we like offensively, that the thing about them is they all have good defenses too. So you're talking positive game script. You're talking scoring early. You're talking running the ball late, so you like all aspects of that offense because they're going to be able to do a lot, and they can throw up points in the early stages of the game and then drag out the game afterwards. So they're going to have more offensive opportunities because they have take away and shut down defenses, and that's why we like these teams, is because it's not just it's not like the Chicago Bears last year where they're going to be down in every game and it's just going to be the Justin Fields show. Like, you'd expect more from those teams that are going to be late in games. I think there's some value in that, and we'll talk about that later with the teams we want to avoid, with teams that just overall their roster is not that good, but there are guys you're going to like there just because of negative game script. I think the positive game script is another thing that bodes well offensively for especially running backs that are going to be able to eat up yards and eat up touches at the end of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it perfectly. The two teams we talked about are both in the same division, in a division where offenses are pretty heavy. The defenses are good there too, but they beat each other up. So you're going to have some shootouts. This next team, and we just spoke about a player that just moved from the New York Jets to the Cleveland Browns with Elijah Moore, is the Cleveland Browns. This may surprise some people, but to me, this team here is sneaky. I think this team is going to find opportunities to present themselves and score points, and there's plenty of people on this team that can score those points. You've got a seriously good wide receiver in Amari Cooper. You've got a great wide receiver too in Elijah Moore, but Donovan Peoples-Jones had his abilities last year. I remember grabbing him off waivers early in the season and plug in and play him. You've got Nick Chubb
and Devin Tillman.
Yes, but you've got Nick Chubb, who is a running back that is constantly disrespected in fantasy ADP. This guy has been the number 5 running back 3 years running. There's no reason why he shouldn't be drafted top 5, but for some reason we don't. He no longer has Kareem Hunt. So now he's got more opportunities. We may see him catch a little bit more balls. And then here's the thing. Deshaun Watson is a very good quarterback. You cannot judge him on his play last season. You could judge him on his off-field antics, and we don't agree with his off-field antics, but you can't judge him on his last, 6 games that he played last season or whatever it may have been, because the 3 years prior, this man was unstoppable in football. He was a top 5 quarterback across the board. And, when you throw for an average of over 4,000 yards in those 3 seasons, and you throw for an average of 28 touchdowns in those 3 seasons, and you run for an average of like 470 yards in those 3 seasons, those are top quarterback numbers. And like I said in my short earlier this week, he would have been, with his average numbers over those 3 seasons, would have been 7 points shy of Jalen Hurts and the QB5 last year. So give this man a full preseason, a full training camp, and the full season, and he will not surprise you. He is going to go back to Houston times. Like, he's still young. He's still got the tools to play the game. And I think people are sleeping on him. And to me, he's this guy that needs to be drafted in the top 10 quarterbacks in fantasy. So that's how I feel about the Browns.
We talked a little bit earlier in one of our earlier episodes about when Elijah Moore went there. We were talking about if Deshaun Watson returned to 80% of what he was. Let's say he doesn't come back to fully what he was. Let's say he comes back to 80% of what he was. He was still a top 5 quarterback then. But you can make the argument in Texas, and then when he was with the Texans, he didn't really have a lot of weapons around him. He had Brandon Cooks. There wasn't a ton of weapons around him.
I think I will say at the tail end, he did have D-Hop and he had Will Fuller for that one of those. I think for one of those seasons, for sure.
Right. You're right. And then he had David Johnson during the only year that he was good. But I say the offense here is a lot better. You have Njoku. I think Tillman's going to come on later this year, but Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, who I think that Nick Chubb is easily one of the most, like you said, the most disrespected running back in fantasy football. I mean, he's going to see less stacked boxes this year because there's an actual threat of a pass, and there's no Kareem Hunt there. So that's the guy I'm targeting. If I'm in the middle of the first round and Jefferson, Kupp, Tyreek go, and obviously the big time running backs are off the board. If CMC, if I'm sitting there in the 6th or 7th pick, Chubb's on my short list of guys I want there.
I'm taking him over Najee Harris. I'm taking him over Derrick Henry every time
easily
because I have more confidence in this guy.
Yeah, it's crazy to see Bijan going over him.
Don't even start with me about the ADP for Bijan.
It doesn't make sense to me.
What doesn't make sense is the comparison to Saquon Barkley. I'm partial being a Giants fan, but I tell you what, when you watch film of Saquon Barkley in college and then you go watch Bijan Robinson and they try and compare the two of them, I don't see the comparison because I don't see the same athlete.
No.
Like Bijan's going to be a good running back in the NFL, but they are not the same person, and he's not the unicorn that Saquon was. There's a reason why he didn't go top 2. There's a reason why the Arizona Cardinals didn't draft him at 3 and decided to trade down. There's a reason. Like he's not.
There's no disrespect. There's not disrespect to Bijan Robinson. I think he's really talented. But is he ready to? Are we ready his rookie year to come into an Atlanta Falcons offense and saying this guy is going to just completely take over carries from a guy that they drafted last year? And it's a stacked backfield. There's 3 legitimate running backs there.
Algier did a great job.
Yeah,
last year.
And we're seeing now Nick Chubb with the most touches he's had in 3 years potentially, and people are disrespecting him by saying he's outside the top 10. I've seen. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Let's just talk about Najee Harris, as a running back that was drafted high up in the first round a couple years ago when he was a rookie. He's a guy who came out, and obviously they weren't touting him as like the next Saquon, the next big running back. But, he was still running back 4 in standard leagues across the board. So, I don't see a pathway, and this is because Bijan is a Falcon, for him to jump Nick Chubb in that value. Nick Chubb has a decent offensive line. Definitely not what they used to be when they were really stacked, but decent offensive line. And they have a better passing game. They have better weapons. They're a threat through the air. And let's just be honest, Nick Chubb is the best pure running back in the NFL. So it translates to standard fantasy football. He had 12 touchdowns last year. He was consistently over 1,000 yards rushing. So yeah, he gets disrespected.
Let's kind of shift back to the rest of the Browns right now. And
sorry, I'm passionate about Chubb.
I am too. Like Chubb and Cooper are kind of the only guys I see going in the first 5 rounds. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, like Elijah Moore is going to be sitting there. Donovan Peoples-Jones are going to be sitting there. Like that's a piece of the offense that I would love to have. And they're going to be sitting there in the 8th, 9th, 10th round for you to grab it. No one's going to value them because they're saying, oh, well, Deshaun Watson last year didn't come back. He's not going to be able to stay in that offense. Njoku's probably going to go late. And those are guys you can just snag up and steal. Like, again, you're not drafting them to be your wide receiver 2 at that point, but they can be it. They can absolutely be it. Njoku can end up being a starting tight end.
He was on pace for tight end 7 last year, and he had a couple rough games, and he had a couple injuries that kept him off the field for like 4 games maybe, and I think he finished at tight end 13. Very good tight end to plug in and play week. Let me make one more note on the Browns before we move on to our next team, and that's the whole note on Deshaun Watson. He's ranked in some of the bigger platforms. I think ESPN has him ranked at 9, and that's kind of where he's been sitting. But again, you look at some of these things. I 100% want to draft Deshaun Watson over the likes of Trevor Lawrence, Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott. Like you could even argue, and this is my opinion, I don't like Justin Fields as much as I like Deshaun Watson. I like the path to success for Deshaun Watson more because of the talent around him. So,
yeah. The only guy I would probably put over him in that is Dak. Only because I think Dak has a ton of weapons around him now, and he does every year. But he can throw up consistent numbers.
And he can throw a lot of picks though too. Dak has slowly been falling off in terms of those big jumps in numbers, and it's tough. Yeah. Partly because he's in a very tough division. Too,
yeah. So. Well, and this is the last point. I promise, guys. Last point on the Browns. But this is a common theme amongst these teams that we like. This defense is good.
Yeah, this defense is going to keep the ball in the offense's hands.
Yeah, this defense is going to be good.
Well, let's move on to the Seattle Seahawks. This is a team that surprised a lot in the draft by drafting Charbonnet, another running back after Kenneth Walker had a great season for them last year. And they added another wide receiver, which was a surprise to me because as a Giants fan, I wanted the Giants to trade up to 20 with the Seahawks to go get a wide receiver. I'm happy with who we got. Side note. That being said, Seattle's got 3 legitimate wide receivers. obviously we already know that Lockett and DK Metcalf are legitimate wide receivers. Both those guys put up wide receiver 1 numbers, season-long wide receiver 1 numbers. But you can add Jackson Smith and Jigba now there, a guy that's going to be a big body, good receiver. He's going to find a mismatch because you can't cover all three. You have a Geno Smith who was QB5 last year, who's going to come back with more weapons. There is going to be potentially a shared backfield with Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet, but I like that. To me, I like that opportunity because I think Kenneth Walker wasn't drafted to be this bell cow back like he had to be last year. Kenneth Walker was built to be the co-owner of that backfield with Rashad Penny and was going to give him change of pace, was going to get balls out the backfield catching. And now you get a running back in Charbonnet who's more of a pure between the tackles runner, kind of like a Nick Chubb, who's going to get some good early down work, change of pace with him. And then it's going to let Kenneth Walker stay fresh and stay healthy and break off those home runs like he did in a couple of those games last year. I like all the positions here. The tight ends is the only murky area for me. It's tough to see who's going to get the ball there. They got targeted off in the game, and they had a lot of touchdowns last year, but you didn't know if it was going to be Fant, if it was going to be Disley, who was going to be at that time. But he, again, Geno likes his tight ends and he likes his receivers, and he's got a plethora this year again. The sky's the limit in a division that's very winnable for them.
Yeah, and you kind of hit all my points. Is the tight end is the only position here that I don't like. And just because they spread the ball amongst 3 tight ends. But the Seahawks and the Niners are the 2 good teams in this division, and Arizona and LA are both rebuilding.
Yeah.
So you're going to assume that these offenses are going to feast on those rebuilding teams. And with the 3 wide receiver set, DK is probably going to have a better year than he did last year. Lockett is going to be Lockett, and then the addition of JSN, who, again, you like you said, are you going to match him against a nickel corner? Okay, yeah. Great.
3 wide receiver sets is going to be dangerous.
JSN could be a wide receiver 1, and he can build into that, but he doesn't have to be. And now he's going up against nickel corners.
Yeah.
Yep. Or they put him in on the outside and then put Lockett into the slot. That's fine too. But then Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet, yeah, they're probably going to split touches. I think it's going to favor Kenneth Walker a little bit more. But I think coming off an injury last year, I think they're going to work him in slowly, and they're not going to overuse him. But I think the plan last year was to have Penny and Kenneth Walker kind of split touches, maybe 60-40. And I think it's going to be the same split this year with Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. But it doesn't mean I don't want a piece of them. Doesn't mean that I don't want
either one of them. I definitely want
either one.
In our league, Kenneth Walker's keepable, so I'm targeting Charbonnet if he's out there. I'm going to try and snipe him around earlier than people want to take him because I just want a piece of it.
This is what I'll say about Charbonnet. Is I think he's going to be, other than Bijan, I think he might be the next rookie running back off the board. So I think a lot of people are going to go maybe in the 7th or 8th round to try to go and grab him, which – that's ideally not where you kind of want a guy that's only going to get 40% of the backfield touches, but maybe even less than that. But what do I want him? Absolutely. Because if Kenneth Walker comes back hobbled or re-aggravates something, it's going to be Charbonnet's backfield. And we can see a Kenneth Walker-like season from Charbonnet this year. And I think this offense is just very good. I think the veteran Geno Smith is obviously a lot better than the younger version of Geno Smith, but he threw for over 4,000 yards last season, and now you add more weapons on the offense to him, where they already spread the ball around and push the ball downfield. I think this can be a really, really good offense, and in a very non-competitive division outside the Niners.
Yeah, they've had 2 great seasons of NFL drafts for the Seahawks. I think their offensive line and defense grew much better last year, and then this year you just got yourself some offensive weapons to get you over the hump. Let's go to another team.
Again, it's a good defense.
Yeah,
it's a good defense, so that means positive game script, and that's even better for Charbonnet because in the games that they're up 3 scores, Kenneth Walker's not going to be in there getting touches. Charbonnet probably will.
Correct. So, Pete Carroll doesn't play fantasy.
He doesn't play fantasy. He's like Bill Belichick. They don't care about your fantasy scores.
Well, let's talk about another team that's got a plethora of wide receiver weapons, and that's the LA Chargers. They're another team that surprised some people a little bit by drafting a third rookie wide receiver to an already good veteran duo that they had in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. And that's with Quentin Johnston, who, again, you look at his size, that surprised me a little bit. I thought they would, if they were going to get a receiver, go somebody like Addison or Flowers, I believe, because I think they went right after the Seattle. Is that correct? And they took Quentin Johnston. So I thought they would go somebody small, playing the slot outside of the two guys.
I think they went right before. I think Quentin Johnston went before JSN.
No, JSN was 20. He was first.
Okay.
But I digress. These receivers of the Chargers are great. Quentin Johnston's a big playmaker. He's one of those guys that catch a ball over the middle, take it to the house like he did at TCU. He's good down the sideline. That's where he got a lot of his work at TCU as well. It takes a little pressure off Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. He's a better receiver than Palmer and Carter were for them in that third spot, and I think it makes sense why they would do it. I mean, when you have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams only on the field for 6 games together last season, you need somebody else with talent. Gerald Everett, tight end, still there with Darnell Parham. Obviously, Gerald Everett, he had some drops last year, but he is the better receiving tight end of the group, and they try to do a lot of tight end screens with him, short plays with him. He's a good yards after the catch receiving tight end. And then you have Austin Eckler and Justin Herbert, two guys that, to me, in my opinion, with the new offensive coordinator there, Justin Herbert, I say it here on the Standard Fantasy Podcast, you'll hear it first, he will be the NFL MVP this year. With the passing volume bound to go up, there's no way that he's not going to be as successful with the weapons around him. With Eckler coming back and coming out the backfield, he was hobbled, yes, due to injury earlier on, but he was hobbled season long by his offensive coordinator.
Yeah, again, this is an offense that's just absolutely stacked. You have a top 10 quarterback, a top 10 receiver, and a top 3 running back. And anytime you have any of one of those, and then you add Mike Williams and then Quentin Johnston into the mix, and then Gerald Everett. And
Gerald Everett was top 15, I think, as well.
Yeah,
top 15.
Donald Parham was injured last year, so I think Everett got a lot of benefit from that. But they have 2 legitimate tight ends that you can target really late in the draft. But I think there's other weapons there too. They have so many, and they're big. Keenan Allen's going to be Keenan Allen, right? He's going to eat up
best
targets.
Route runner in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean Cooper Kupp. Let's back up.
Cooper Kupp faces a lot of zone defense.
Top two.
He faces a lot of zone defense. Keenan Allen gets a lot more man coverage, and his footwork is stellar. Go type in on YouTube Keenan Allen footwork and get back to me. Okay.
I'll do that. But you got deep threats with Mike Williams, and I think this is an offense that, again, they're going to score points. They're going to be in a division where they have to. They're going to have to win games. They're going to win the 2 games against Kansas City. They're going to have to try to outscore them. And then you have Vegas in that division, who just gives up a ton of points, and who has given up a ton of points, especially downfield. I think this is a great offense that, again, I'm targeting any one of these guys at their value where I can.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a later guy just to get Quentin Johnston in the 7th or 8th round. I think all 3 of these wide receivers might go in the top 9 rounds. And
I wouldn't be surprised if they do, because I'm telling you right now, with Kellen Moore going to be calling the plays there, I think the passing volume is just going to go up. I think, they have a great running game in Eckler, but I don't see there being a stout backup to Eckler. I mean, you have Isaiah Spiller and some other guys back there, but it's always been Eckler's show. And again, I will say something about Eckler in a second. I think they're going to find ways to get the ball in their future, and that's Justin Herbert hands. But here's the thing, and here's a note about Eckler if you're deciding who you're going to take, if you're the number 2 pick or on in fantasy, is if you're the number 2 pick and you're deciding between Eckler, Justin Jefferson, somebody else, let's just note how well running backs do on contract years or years they're about to be free agents. They ball out. And this is
Saquon last year, Josh Jacobs last year.
Yep. And this is the year for Eckler to ball out again. If you think he couldn't do more, he can. He will. He is going to be a free agent after the season. He got his $2 million opportunity and incentives for the season from the Chargers, and it's looking like, according to Rappaport and the guys, that he's going to go to free agency after the season. So look for him to put his blood, sweat, and tears on the field to prove himself for a big contract. I don't think we need to say much more about the Chargers because we liked them last year. They fell flat on their face, and again, I think it was all play calling at the end of the day, and their head coach. I think he realized that he stepped on his own foot too many times.
They dealt with a lot of injuries too last year. I still love the talent there, whether or not they had injuries last year. I think these guys are guys you want to target and you want to have on your team because Keenan Allen's going to get volume. He can win you a week. Mike Williams again. He can score big points and he has the big playability. Quentin Johnson, I think, can come in, and again, he's not going to be facing number one receivers or number one corners, so he's going to get a lot of opportunity. And there's nothing more we have to say about Eckler or Herbert. People, everyone unanimously loves those guys from a fantasy standpoint. So.
Our last team is another team that everybody loves, and we don't even have to go into too much detail with them, but we'll talk about some of the lesser names on this team that we do really like, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, we're talking about a team that took the AFC by storm, and Joe Burrow, Cool Joe, Smooth Joe, this guy is a legit quarterback, another guy that I'm trying to target if I can. If you're not getting those top 3 guys, top 4 guys, and a rushing quarterback, Burrow and Herbert are two guys that are going to lead your team and give you steady Eddie points. Obviously, you've got Jamar Chase, you've got T. Higgins, and you've got Tyler Boyd, who I talked about this morning, I believe it was, on this guy is consistently throwing up 800-yard seasons and 5 touchdowns a season on average. Obviously that could be higher, a little bit lower, but this guy is a target hog for Joe Burrow in situations, and we just know Chase and T. Higgins haven't been able to stay healthy in their seasons, so he comes in as a solid wide receiver 2 role. You plug him right in away. This is one of those guys that is not a bench warmer. He's a guy that is ready to go, and he's a flex play on bye weeks, and he is a guy who can find your starting lineup. Running back's a little bit interesting. We don't know what's going on with Mixon. Obviously, if Mixon's there, he's a solid running back. If he's not going to be there, we're going to rely on a rookie because P. Ryan has departed. So let me know your thoughts on that.
All right. So just right off the bat, this is a team that has a wide receiver 1A and a wide receiver 1B.
Yep.
T. Higgins and Chase are both wide receiver 1s. Now, we've talked about T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I did a short on him where I think that I've seen him go as high as number 3 off the board overall. And that if someone's going to go and do that, let them do that. I'm not going to be that person that does it because I'll go and get T. Higgins in the second round.
Yep.
And I love that pick in the second or the third round. But Tyler Boyd is another guy that goes overlooked that you can probably get later in the draft. But even if Joe Mixon isn't there, I love the running back situation there. I don't care if Mixon's there or not. Like, this is a running back room that I want. Chase Brown, I think, is going to – if Mixon is not there, Chase Brown is – I'll take a shot here. He might be my offensive rookie of the year if Mixon is not there.
Yeah, I agree. If he's not there, I think he's got the biggest path to success for that.
Yeah, I think he's going to probably put up the best numbers out of a rookie running back if Mixon is not there. If Mixon's there, I obviously his value goes down. But I love him as a great handcuff because he produced in college. He was eating up carries. He had over 300 carries last year. So he can sustain the workload. And he was averaging over 100 yards. I think it was over 118 yards a game and he averaged a touchdown a game. This guy was the offense at Illinois. And I think he's coming into a situation where, again, he's not going to be asked to do a lot. Even if Mixon's not there, you're so stacked at receiver and the teams are playing against the defense of the pass that you're not going to face stacked boxes.
Yeah.
You're going to have such a good opportunity to come in where there's so many weapons around you where they're going to forget about you. And he has a chance to kind of break out and have good gains every time he runs the ball. And this offensive line is getting better and better every year. Burrow is getting better and better every year. This is a team that's going to be threatening for the AFC. So I like everyone around this team. And again, this is a team that I want a piece of. I don't care where. The only thing is I'm not getting Chase at the third pick. Like late first round, sure, but I don't even think Chase is in my top 3 wide receivers right now.
No, and I agree with you across the board. I mean, teams are not playing against the running backs. Teams are playing against Joe Burrow when they play this team. So I'd even take a flyer on Brown, even if Mixon does come, because I think he is going to probably be the future of this team at the long term. And I think I agree with you. He's going to get his, and if again Mixon's not there, he's going to crush. I don't think we have to talk much more about this. I mean, let's move on to teams that we want to avoid. Now, this is where it's going to get a little sticky and hairy. I think people are going to have their difference of opinion on us here, but this is, again, our opinion. And again, we're not saying don't pick these guys, but I think we're saying that there's definitely better value at the position of the players that we talk about rather than going for these guys. And we'll start off the first team, and that's in my division, the Giants division, and that's the Washington Commanders. I don't particularly want to touch anybody on this team. It's a difficult division to begin with. We don't know what we're getting out of Sam Howell at QB. Brian Robinson had a great season last year, coming off being shot as a rookie. But Antonio Gibson is still a thorn in his side there. Terry McLaurin is probably the one bright spot that I love because he's a yardage guy. Jahan Dotson stole a lot of touchdowns from him, and Jahan Dotson's good too as well. Again, it hinges on Sam Howell, and I just don't know what I like about that. And you've got the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Giants who just beefed up all their safeties and D-backs. Good luck, Sam Howell. That's all I have to say.
Yeah,
good luck.
Mean, that's what it is. Like, just good. The enemy is there now, calling plays on offense, and
I love that.
I think that might help. That might help them out a little bit. But this division is so stacked. I mean, especially defensively, the Giants, Eagles, and the Cowboys. Now, I can say the Cowboys probably are the worst of those 3 teams against the run, but they're going to have for a running back standpoint, good luck running against the Eagles and good luck running against the Giants. Like, they were 2 of the top teams last year against the run. So let's just take the running backs out of it. Brian Robinson, who had a good rookie season, especially after being his whole situation last year. But he's going to lose some touches to Antonio Gibson. So that's more going to be like a 50-50 split there. But do you love either one of them to kind of be a breakout player and to produce? I don't like them early. I think I have Brian Robinson eligible as a keeper in the 10th round. And I think that's kind of where he's going to go. So, I'm not going to keep him at where his ADP is. But that's, the guys I talked about in the video I did earlier in the week was that I do like Terry McLaurin and I do like Jahan Dotson. And only because they're going to be in such bad negative game script throughout the season, because I just don't know what we're going to have from Sam Howell. And even in Sam Howell's college career, he wasn't pushing the ball downfield. So I think that I like McLaurin way more than I like Dotson, because Dotson last year, he really thrived off the deep ball and Heineke pushing the ball downfield. And it was all garbage. It was garbage time touchdowns, and that's fine, because I don't care if it's garbage time or it's on the first play of the game. Like, points are points.
Yeah.
In terms of fantasy, but I think that takes away from Dotson a little bit more. But because of the negative game script, they might be facing, weaker defenses, or, they might be down in games by 3 or 4 scores, and just have no option but to throw the ball. So you like receivers in those kind of settings. But outside of McLaurin and Dotson, I don't really like anyone else this year for them. I just don't know what the offense is going to be like. And until I kind of see game 1, game 2, what they kind of look like, I'd rather pick those guys up off of free agency or the waiver wire.
I'd rather let somebody else take them. Yeah, let somebody else draft them. All right. I mean, Commanders in the division, you may say, okay, yeah, so they play 6 games against their division opponents. Yeah, but the way the games are spread out on the season, you usually have some late games where it's trying to make playoffs in your fantasy league, and it's early games where you want to try and capitalize on those early games before bye weeks, and you don't want to be relying on Sam Howell in both situations. So Another team that we are trying to avoid, and I think this is a more of a collective agreement too, is the Arizona Cardinals. You've got Kyler Murray coming off an ACL tear. We have no timetable for return, and when he does return, who knows? You can't expect him to be Kyler of old in scrambling around and making plays. So you're talking about making him more stationary in the pocket and not trying to string off these runs like he did before. You've got James Conner, an elder running back. He's not too old. He's still young in terms of things, but it's going to be on his shoulders. That's the one guy that I would trust on taking, but I'm not taking him in the top 4 rounds like all these other big running backs are and starting running backs are. I'm trying to take him 5th round on because I'd like to get the value out of him, but you're going to be on a team that's going to be a negative game script. And at some point, they're going to have to just stop running the ball and start throwing the ball through the air with Colt McCoy. And yeah, he catches the ball at the backfield. He had 46 receptions last year. He's good. He's solid. And I think he doesn't get enough love in the fantasy community either. But again, I just don't like the offense around him. No Kyler there hurts Hollywood Brown's potential. It hurts D-Hop's potential. And those two guys hurt each other's potential, to be honest with you. They didn't mesh together like you see Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. It's just not the same style of offense. And I just don't know where Arizona is going to go moving forward. In my opinion, that contract with Kyler was crazy. I feel like they should just went rebuild and let Kyler move on. But I'm sticking away from the Arizona Cardinals. I don't want a piece of them. Zach Ertz, great tight end, don't want a piece of him. I just want to watch the points stay low and watch my opponents keep starting these guys against me. That's my goal.
Yeah, I think that, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Arizona Cardinals because you kind of hit all my points. One thing I will say is that D-Hop, I think, is the most interesting person in this draft this year because talent-wise, he's a top 10 receiver.
Yeah.
I keep seeing him drop further and further down draft boards because, all right, Josh McCown's a starter for the season, and let's say Kyler comes back week 4 to week 6. Coming off an ACL injury, I don't think Kyler's going to be the same guy he was because he relied so much on the scrambling ability to get outside the pocket and make plays outside the pocket because he was always under pressure.
Yeah.
And you're coming off an ACL injury. You're not going to be fully comfortable doing the same kind of movements. And he's a smaller guy too. So he needs to get away from these bigger linemen that are chasing him down.
He needs to see over them too.
And yeah, he can't see over him. I think his arm talent's fine. I just don't, I can't see opportunity. And they're going to go against the Seahawks twice a year and the Niners twice a year. Even though they're going to have to play the Rams
twice a year. The Rams D-backs aren't terrible.
They're not great either. Again, that's another defense, another team that's rebuilding. But he has to
go against Aaron Donald twice a year, though.
Yeah. Who can run him down very, very easily. But outside of D-Hop and Connor, I really there's no one in this offense that I like. I'm staying away from Hollywood Brown. If I have an opportunity to draft him even later, I'm not going to.
No, I like Connor. He's a keepable guy for me. I obviously could choose between him and Dameon Pierce. And Connor's an 8th round guy for me in my keeper. I think that's below where his value should be anyway. But again, I'd take Connor, but I'm not taking him as an RB1. I'd take him as an RB2/flex because you just don't know, because he can give you those RB2 numbers or he's giving you flex numbers. And again, the people that are going to be around him in that draft are going to really determine it, and I think there's going to be better value around that. So the next team I want to talk about is a team that you're a little bit more passionate about avoiding, and I think a lot of people are going to get their feathers ruffled over this one, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, I've seen so many arguments with this already, but personally, I think that they're the least talented offense in this division. Defensively, they're a great team, but I think every team in this division has a good defense. And so that's all right. Let's put that on an even playing field, even though I would probably say the Steelers are top 2 defense in this division.
They're a solid defense, yeah.
They're a solid defense. But look at the quarterbacks that are in this division. All right. You have Burrow, Lamar, and Deshaun. Kenny Pickett is light years behind them.
Not them.
Light years. even they said that the second half of the season, there was so much growth with Kenny Pickett in the last 7 games where he wasn't turning the ball over as much. He only threw for 5 touchdowns in the last 7 games. Had 1 interception, but only threw for 5 touchdowns.
Yep.
Now, I think that, yeah, they're talented at receiver with Allen Robinson and Deontay Johnson and
George Pickens.
George Pickens. That Pat Freiermuth is a good tight end.
Yeah. Don't forget Washington.
Najee Harris is just going to eat a lot of carries and slowly just churn his way and average 3 yards a carry the entire season. That's fine. But there's not a whole lot of guys I'm going to try to reach for. I think that Kenny Pickett's not going to have the volume. He's not going to throw for over 4,000 yards. He might throw for like 3,000 to 3,500 yards this season. And do you think that's enough to sustain
low 20s, probably low 20s in touchdowns?
Low 20s in touchdowns. So
at best,
yeah, you have talent at the wide receiver, but are they going to be producing? You know, we had Deontay Johnson not score a touchdown last year. Yeah. You know, and so you want a guy that's only going to have 800 yards in the season and not score a touchdown. Like I like other guys that are probably going to go around the same roundage that he's going to go. I think they're so, you know, especially Pickens and Deontay, they're so like evenly ranked in terms of where I would put them and in terms of their overall ADP. That do you even want to go and get them in the 8th round? Like,
well, those guys, their ADP is higher than the 8th round in some of these that I'm seeing, and that's what I'm saying. It's like this is a perfect example of, to me, this is a team that has names on it, that have talent behind those names, that I don't think they're going to be able to put it together to be talented, and the value on your draft boards is not going to equal the people that are around them. There's going to be people to the left and right of you in that draft that are going to take somebody in that same round that you take Deontay Johnson, and they're going to get more out of those players than you're going to get out of him. And that's just how I look at this team. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if Deontay Johnson is sitting there in the 10th or 11th round, I'm going to go and get him just because he's talented. And who knows, like he might have – I don't see them scoring a lot of points this year. And even Najee, like he's at the end of my tier 1 running backs, like at the tail end of it.
Yeah, I agree with
you. He doesn't break off the big run. He doesn't have 20-yard. You know, he very, very rarely has had. I think he had 1 or 2 20-plus yard runs last season.
Yeah.
He doesn't do. He gets in the end zone and he gets a lot of goal line touches. So there's that, and I like that for him. But he's the only guy I would take in this offense in probably the first 8 rounds.
Yeah. Well, another team that the only guy I would take in the first 3 rounds off their team is a running back as well, and that's the Tennessee Titans. Besides Derrick Henry, I don't want anybody on this offense. Anybody.
He's the only guy I would take in the first 20 rounds. In a 15-round draft.
We could make this one short on the Titans because they're already talking about, hey, if the season's not going well, let's get Will Levis in. And that's not even coming from the Titans camp per se, so don't quote me on that, but that's what all the experts are saying. That's what they should do. Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. He's gonna put up over 1,000 yards rushing. He's gonna get a plethora of touchdowns. But when you face stacked boxes over stacked boxes, look what the Giants did to him week 1 of last year to open the season. They put him in his place and they won that ball game. And Tannehill just couldn't get the job done. You look at Treylon Burks, another wide receiver that's very talented, but now he has no company around him and talent around him to really give him opportunity. I mean, we're talking about like baseball here, where if your power hitter doesn't have good hitters around him, you don't have to pitch to him. If your wide receiver 1 doesn't have good wide receivers around him, just double team him, take him out of the game. And that's what teams are going to try and do. And so I want no part of this team. I don't care. Anybody can make an argument they want with me. They're not going to sell me on this one. Derrick Henry's the only guy that I would take. But I told you, I'll take Chubb over him any day.
Yeah, I can be very wrong about this, okay? But Treylon Burks is a number 2 wide receiver playing a number 1. And he doesn't create the separation that wide receiver 1s have to create. He doesn't have the big playability like I know he's only his 2nd year, but there's no one else there. There literally is no one else there. And so all the pressure's on him to make catches. And Derrick Henry is going to be Derrick Henry. So he's, like I said, the only person I want to draft, period.
Yeah. And
If one of these guys end up coming on late, I'll go and pick them up off waiver wire. But I am not wasting a single draft pick on anyone but Derrick Henry.
No, I'm taking flyers on rookies that have upside than taking a guy on this team. That
I'll take undrafted free agent. I don't care.
Let's move on to a team that I think you and I agree on too. That could be a little interesting. I want to save the one that you and I differ on for the end because it'd be a little bit more of a conversation. But
sure.
Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and a team that now has a new quarterback. Tom Brady era is over in Tampa Bay after a couple seasons. And you've got now Baker Mayfield, a guy who wasn't a 4,000-yard passer, wasn't like a 30-something-yard touchdown thrower. I mean, he was a run-of-the-mill, 3,500, 25 touchdown type guy. He's a game manager at times. He is a player. Like, this guy has got grit in him. It's the type of guy you want running your offense mentally. But he's got good receivers. You've got Mike Evans. You've got Chris Godwin. You've got Gage, I believe, right, is still there, and you lose Brate, and you lose your running back in Fournette, who I thought was kind of like a parking brake for that team. I think he slowed them down. He had a great season, but his yards per carry were terrible. The whole team's yards per carry were terrible. I think the fresh legs of Rachaad White will be nice, but again, where you're taking these guys, like where Mike Evans is going, I want receivers around him. Godwin, you may take a chance on, but again, you got to look at who's to the left and right of you and understand that there's probably better value on the board because, again, you're talking about Baker Mayfield that barely was able to give positive success to two receivers with Landry and Odell Beckham for one season out of their time together in the Browns. So you can't expect both these guys to be, and this, fantastic coming off of a 5,000-yard passing season from Tom Brady.
Yeah, I think that, I did a video last week on Mike Evans, and he's kind of one of my bust candidates this year. I think he's going to have his first sub 1,000-yard receiving season this year. Baker Mayfield has proven his entire career he does not sustain deep ball receivers. Yeah. And Mike Evans is the definition of a deep ball receiver. I get it. He can run the short routes too, and he can be productive there. But over the last 8 seasons, a lot of his touchdowns and a lot of his bigger games came off the deep ball. Those multi-touchdown games, those 100-plus yard receiving games were off the deep ball. Yeah. I think Chris Godwin is in a much better position to have a good season with Baker Mayfield. But this is kind of like prove it to me. And I don't really trust anyone in this offense until it's proven to me that Baker can run this offense.
Correct.
And even with Rachaad White, like I love Rachaad White. I'm an Arizona State guy, Arizona State alumni. So I got to watch him, play because I, watched the terrible Pac-12. But I don't know if Rachaad White is going to be able to sustain the backfield by himself. I think he's going to have the opportunity for having that backfield to himself and getting the majority of the touches and being productive with them. But I don't know how sustainable that is. And I also don't see him breaking into the top 10 running backs. So
as a running back one,
I like at value, and same with Evans and same with Godwin. Like I like those guys at value, but compared to we're talking about what the last 3-4 years of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been, and all these guys have produced at every kind of level, and they've been top guys in the league and guys you want to go and draft in the first 3 or 4 rounds, and they're not that this year. I wouldn't take any one of these guys in the first 4 rounds. Mike Evans is probably the lowest drop for me. Godwin I would probably take in the 4th or 5th round. But then Mike Evans is probably going to be dropping to maybe the 6th or 7th round for me in my where I would want him at value. And he's probably not going to be there. Someone's going to take him, and I'm fine. I'm fine with saying go ahead and take him. I'll get someone else that I like, because I think guys like T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, those guys are much better value at where they're going to go. Even getting, I think Jordan Addison is probably going to have a better season than both of them. And Jordan Addison you can get in the 8th round.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. I again, like you, just like you said, it's like you're going to shy away from Mike Evans, you take a flyer on Godwin at value. And by at value, we're meaning lower than what their ADP is. That's what we're saying at value. And same thing with White is I'd take him at value as well. Because at the end of the day, he's going to get the volume. He's going to get the opportunity. And if you are somebody who goes hero running back and take one big guy up top and then go heavy on receivers and or quarterbacks and tight ends, and then you try and go for a running back a little later, this guy drops down to you, you've got a solid RB2 in terms of volume. And it's, again, a show me is like, are you going to be better than 3.7 yards per carry? And if you are, it's a successful running back too. But if you're not, and you're just like you were last year, it's tough for me to put my season on the line with a team that's so questionable that couldn't protect Tom Brady. How are you going to protect Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, and just to clarify, this is a team that it's not a strict avoid. This is a pump your brakes and a cautionary tale, all right, to let's see what this offense is before you kind of dive into it, and maybe don't reach for these players. And if they fall to you to where you feel there's no one else around you that you like, then go and get these guys. But I'd be very cautious about drafting any one of these guys.
Well, this isn't a void for me. It's an avoid in terms of what their value is and where their ADP is. That's my avoid.
Right.
Last one is where we kind of differ a little bit. I don't know if we agree somewhat, but we differ on other things, and that's the New Orleans Saints. And I'll say my piece and let you counter it, but I think we're gaslighting Derek Carr too much in the football industry. And I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but we're talking about a guy that, 2 years ago he threw for 4,800 yards. But guess what? He didn't throw for 4,000 last year. And he barely threw for 4,000 3 seasons before that. And he hasn't thrown for more than 27 touchdowns in like 6 seasons. This guy is a perennial mid to low 20 touchdown quarterback. He's going to throw double-digit interceptions. He's going to barely touch 4,000 yards, and he's not good in the running game. And when you put that on the plate, what makes him any different than Andy Dalton, who, last year it was a tough season because their offensive line was riddled with injuries. But Andy Dalton is a perennial 3,500 to 4,000 yard passer. He's a perennial low 20 touchdown passer and double-digit interception guy. So, they got a gamer. They got a guy that's got grit and stuff like that. And he wants to win ball games, and you bring a new attitude to it all. But you add on the top that Michael Thomas has not been healthy since 2019. You bring on the top that your number one running back may be suspended for part or all season. You bring back the fact, too, that you now take away those two guys, and you've got Chris Olave running solo around there, who was being successful last year doing it. He also was unsuccessful for many games doing it because they just couldn't keep up with the fact that, hey, let's just take him out of the game, and defenses did that. You got Juwan Johnson there as a tight end, solid tight end, had some good games last year, but he also fell off the face of the earth. And then you've got the ultimate tight end in Taysom Hill, who you never know what's going to happen. Now, like Jamal Williams, the goal line god of last year, if he's going to get his goal line work sniped away. And then you've got a great rookie running back there too as well, that if you don't have Kamara there is worth taking a shot on. But you just, to me, they did not impact the team enough by adding another wide receiver weapon to them, because I think they're going to be losing Landry. He's a free agent too. They didn't add another wide receiver weapon. They added a running back there, and they added the quarterback there. But there's too many questions for me to want to take a chance on Michael Thomas and have my season ruined like it did for people last year. Take a chance on Kamara in the first round where he was going, or early second round where he was going, and ruin my season again this year. So to me, this is a team I'm avoiding, even though they have arguably top 3 easiest strength of schedule going into the season. That is based off of last year's numbers. You have the Atlanta Falcons, who paid a lot of money to boost their defense. Falcons to boost their defense. The Bucs are great against the run every single year. They're a stone wall, and they're going to boost their D-backs because that was their weakness last year. And the Carolina Panthers, the question mark in the division. I just don't like this team enough that I want to have pieces on my team anchoring my team. I'm not saying I wouldn't take one of them if they go at value. I'm not saying I wouldn't take a shot at somebody, but I'm not trying to anchor a position on my team with one of these players. If Michael Thomas is my flex, I'm not mad at that. But if Michael Thomas is my wide receiver 2, I don't want to have to hang my hat on that every single week and hoping that he stays healthy, because he's still unsure if he's healthy. They say he's the best shape, the best healthy he's been in a long time. What's that mean?
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of what I see with this team, is that they are going to be there. There's a lot of mouths to feed. I think there's a lot of talent here. All right, let's just say Michael Thomas comes back the healthiest he's ever been. Right, he's very talented. Olave is very talented. Shaheen is a deep threat that I think fits Derek Carr very well. I think Shaheen is going to be an undervalued guy this year that I would take a late round, 14th, 13th pick, very, very late in the draft on, if he's still there, or if there's another guy that drops way, way down that I like. The big question is Kamara, right? The big question is what's going to happen with Kamara. If Kamara's in this offense and he's not going to get suspended, or that suspension is going to get pushed back another year, I think that it opens up a lot for the rest of this offense. Correct. I think if he's not there, if the suspension does come down over the summer and he's missing the entire year, Jamal Williams is a guy that I want to draft. But outside of that, I think there's just so much mediocrity in terms of what their final fantasy production is going to be. Because like you said, Derek Carr, I don't know if he's going to throw for close to 5,000 yards. And let's just say he does throw for 3,800 to 4,200 yards. That's going to be spread out amongst a lot of guys. And it's just going to be a lot of mediocre fantasy performances. And if you're reaching for a guy like Olave, or you're reaching for a guy like Michael Thomas, then you're overpaying for guys that, there's going to be, again, other guys that are going to be there.
Yeah.
This defense is fairly good. So I think that bodes well for the run game, at least. But then you get, again, with Jamal Williams, you have goal line work being sniped by Taysom Hill. You have just, 3 receivers that the ball is just going to get spread out. I don't think there's any guy there that's going to have like hyper-focused targets at him. And because of that, I just don't trust any of these guys as like, let me go and get them. Like, do I think that this is an offense I want to avoid because they're not talented? No, I think this is an offense I want to avoid because I think the ball is going to just get spread out amongst a bunch of different players. I think it's a solid team. I'm not saying they have a terrible roster, but I think the ball is just going to go to so many different mouths to feed that you're just going to have just mediocre fantasy performances. And that's not what you want out of where their draft position is.
No.
Olave is going to go much higher. If Michael Thomas is there for you in the 8th round, like, I'll probably go and get him.
Because Olave is going to go before Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas if Michael Thomas is healthy, it's still going to happen that way.
I think so too. And so if Michael Thomas is there in the 8th or 9th round, yeah, am I going to pass up on him? Because again, like you said, if he's my flex play, am I mad at it? No. That's a great
what I'm saying.
position to be in.
I'd rather have him as a flex than a 1 or 2 for me, for sure.
Yeah, but because of he tried to come back last year, gets hurt, and then is out for the rest of the season, right? And so is there going to be another one of those scenarios where, last year I think he went in the first 5 rounds, and now you lost out on a 5th round draft pick because you're risking it on a guy like that. I think that there are other guys there that I like more, and that depending on where I am in the draft position, I don't know if I necessarily want to reach for a guy like Michael Thomas, and I'm certainly not reaching on Alvin Kamara if the suspension hasn't come down yet. That's a guy I'd rather let someone else deal with that. I'm not going to let him fall to the 6th round. Let me be clear on that. If Alvin Kamara is not suspended and he's sitting there and no one's drafting him because no one wants to take the risk on him, yeah, I'm going to go take a risk on him in the 5th round. Absolutely. I mean, you'd be dumb not to, because you can have an RB1 caliber player in the 5th round because no one wants to take the chance on if he gets suspended or not. But last year, he went in, I think, the 5th overall pick or 6th overall pick for us, and he ended up playing the entire season. So we thought the suspension was going to come down last year. It didn't. That we anticipate the suspension coming down. So I think that's going to kind of be the big driving point for this team, is if he's there or not.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up. You froze about like a minute ago, so everybody watching, you're looking at a still shot of Chris looking off in the distance. It's a beautiful picture of you. Great beard, and I love the Captain America reference. But my closing comments on this are, I don't hate this team a lot. I think people are going to hype this team a little bit more than it needs to be. Again, if the team is healthy, the issue is of spreading the ball around, a lot of mouths to feed. If there's no Kamara, I actually like Kendry Miller a little bit as a sneaky late round pick, sleeper pick, because I think he's a better all-around running back than Jamal Williams. There, I said it. That being said, if Michael Thomas is there, Olave is going to be tough to draft higher up there. And then if Michael Thomas is not there, it's going to be tough to trust Olave having to beat some double teams and to beat those guys and tough defenses when it's just him out there running around and these secondary receivers. So
right.
Again, the value of the players are good. It's kind of like the Steelers. Like, there's good names there. There's a lot of mouths to feed when everybody's healthy in there. That being said, if somebody's not healthy, somebody may shine. Cream will rise to the top. But I don't see Derek Carr throwing for 4,800 yards and 30 touchdowns and being a top 5 quarterback like these guys did last year. Look at quarterback number 5 with Geno Smith. I don't see him doing what Geno Smith did, even though he's on a team that could be similar. So that's it. Those are our teams to target and teams to avoid. Let us know in the comments what you like. Let us know in the comments what you dislike. We're happy to give our feedback, and we like to comment and chat with you guys through the comments there. Again, like and subscribe, and hit that notification button right here for when all the episodes drop. You guys get that note. All right. Tune in next week. Thank you all.
Check out our Twitter and Instagram page as well. We post that daily content on there. You can engage us in conversation.
Yep. Find us in there. Appreciate you all. Tune in next time.